Welcome to another edition of Mississippi Stories. I'm your host, Marshall Ramsey, editor-at-large at Mississippi Today. Got a great guest today, somebody I've had the honor and pleasure of knowing, God, it seems like 400 million years, but I guess since about 2005-ish or so, because, well, anyway, I had a blog on the Clarion Ledger back in the day, and we had a bunch of cool people that got on there and created a conversation, created a community. And one of them was named Flip Flops. And so Flip Flops was always outspoken, was funny. She shared a lot of her life. And so we started having picnics and we got to know each other. And so Stacy Spiehler's with me here today, who was Flip Flops back in the day, but she's so much more. And she has truly one of the greatest stories of resilience that I think I have ever heard. I'm incredibly proud of her. She literally went to hell and back, and recently was named one of 15 winners of the prestigious Lyceum Scholarship Award, and you don't get that very easily from the University of Mississippi, and so we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Stacey, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you, and I'm glad you're back. That was terrible fun.
I see what you did there. Yeah. Yeah, the back thing is, it's kind of been my hobby for the last 10 weeks, but we're getting better with it. So
I understand.
Yeah, ice packs and Tylenol are my friends. So
yeah, I completely understand. And thank you very much for having me. It's great to sit down with you again. When you asked me if I would do this, I was like, absolutely, you're the best interviewer I have ever sat down with.
And you've actually sat down with some pretty good ones too. I mean, because when I interviewed you the last time on Conversations on MPB, which was a great show, by the way, it really was fun to sit down and talk to you. I got a lot of great feedback on that, but you were getting some national interviews too at that point, weren't you?
That was kind of bananas. They put me on this inspirational channel I remember seeing one young woman on there who sang her way through the pain of having her entire body burned. And I thought, I'm just an alcoholic that stopped drinking.
Wow.
I'm not that, but it is incredibly humbling to be in this place after all I've been through. Truly it is.
Well, it's humbling, but and I'll tell you this, and I mean, this is coming from, I'm a little biased because I like to consider we're friends, but damn, you've earned it. I mean, because I can tell you, anybody that's overcoming trauma or overcoming childhood trauma or whatever kind of trauma it is, and suddenly becomes addicted and then has to dig their way out of that hole, there's a whole hell of a lot of work involved with that. I mean, when they wrote The Road Less Traveled, M. Scott Peck or whatever his name was, when we wrote that, the whole gist of that book is you got to do the work.
Yeah.
And you've done that work. And so even since I talked to you last time, I mean, you hadn't quite gotten into the education component of where you are now.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Not even close. I spent 20 years away from school, and for 18 of those years, I think, for 18 of those years, I had told myself, I'm too dumb to go to school. I'm not smart enough to go to school. I can't study. I can't pass tests. And
Stacey, let's unpack that for a second. Why did you think you were too dumb?
Because when I went to college in 1998, I was much more interested in pursuing a boy. And I found one, and I got my MRS degree. And I was a lot more interested in pursuing a relationship or any relationship. And because I was still coming out of kind of that heavy childhood trauma, and I needed companionship more than I needed a grade. And I told myself that was because I was not good enough for school. And, I sat down for my first class, my first class in 20 years away from higher education was statistics. Not just.
Sorry. Let's just go ahead and just see. Okay. Let's just jump into the middle of the gauntlet there.
Woo. Yeah. And I mean, it was good because it took care of my math requirements, because in journalism, you only need 3 hours, which is great, unless I do more data digging, which is, my intended degree is journalism.
Yeah.
But I sat down, and by 8:15 is 8 a.m. class too. Let's just put several different cherries on top. it was an 8 a.m. class, and by 8:15 I was crying, and I was holding it back. And that teacher made learning so easy, and that's incredible to me. And sometimes I guess all it takes is a teacher, and I know your wife's a teacher, and I'm sure she's like this too. Just somebody to make the difficult things to learn easier to learn. And it was him, it was that teacher, my biology teacher, English composition. I remember all of my classes and sitting in them and going into them with this idea that I'm too dumb for this, I'm too dumb for this. And then, no, I'm not. 4.0, 4.0, 3.9, 4.0. And that it was a lot of hard work, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Especially during the pandemic.
Well, let me ask you this, because you lived here in Jackson area,
Right.
and you decided to go to Oxford, but you didn't start at Ole Miss immediately. Why did you decide to go the route of the community college first?
That was entirely a higher power thing. And I'll tell you why, because I had intended to come here and go straight to Ole Miss. But because of my terrible grades in 1999, I had, gosh, a 1.8 GPA. So I was on academic probation from 20 years ago.
Wow.
So I couldn't get loans, grants, anything. And my, your credit, when you come out of addiction, your credit is trash.
Yeah.
And I came out of addiction and a divorce at the same time. So my credit there was no loan. And so I had already put down the deposit on this apartment. I had already put in my last month's rent from my previous apartment in Jackson. I was like, well, I'm moving. What do I do? So I started looking around community college. And I said, okay, I can probably afford to pay for community college kind of out of pocket. But the financial aid officer told me, appeal. And I did. I appealed and I said, listen, this GPA is 20 years old. I'm a little bit wiser now. I've been through a whole lot of things, and please give me a chance. And they did. And so I was able to get my Pell Grant. And without it, I would not have the Lyceum Scholarship, because that's offered to community college transfers.
Yeah.
So that's entirely a higher power thing.
Yeah, truly. I mean, if you start looking backwards on this, you realize there's no way you could have made it any other way. And
right.
But also too, you got in there and discovered, taking that statistics, that, I mean, a lot of it was you doing the hard work on that. And what'd you get the B in?
History. It was my first true pandemic semester.
Yeah.
And I was barely floating. And I came up here 6 months before the pandemic started, and I had not really gotten a chance to get a basis of friendship here. The pandemic really, the isolation really tested me.
Yeah.
And the fact that I still came out of that with a 3.9 is kind of a miracle.
Yeah.
So I'm not, I'm not ashamed of it or anything, but it's still kind of a thorn in my side.
No, I mean, the pandemic was hard on people that don't have to deal with depression or don't have to deal with bipolar, issues. Absolutely. Or any other thing. So, but then suddenly you get that thrown in there too. But I think that speaks, your will has always been incredibly strong. And, I mean, to the good and to the bad, I will say both. Yeah. But that said, I mean, just for the fact on this, now, when did you find out that you won the scholarship?
April 1st.
Oh God, why did they do that?
April 1st. And she called me, and Ace is my 15-year-old son. You know him, yeah. You love him. And actually that's when we met. He was in the NICU, and I was bored. And So I started getting on your blog. So I know that you know who Ace is, but Ace
Okay.
was sitting with me and she called me and I had her on speakerphone and she told me, and this was one of those moments in my life. I remember the last time that I made these noises of joy that were completely involuntary. I remember the last time I did that, and it was when Garrett Hartley kicked the field goal that sent the Saints to the Super Bowl. I collapsed, and Ace is sitting next to me and he's just grabbing me, and we're just completely overjoyed. And she had to really kind of specify to me what was happening, because I don't just have the Lyceum Scholarship, I also have another scholarship. It's the Chancellor's Leadership class.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take a class this upcoming semester on how to become a good leader and citizen and student. And I get a little stipend with that too. So she's telling me all of these things and I'm so overwhelmed and just crying and crying and crying, and she's crying, and Ace is trying to figure out just what to do. Mom's crying and and he's happy with me. So I calmed down and I let her go, and I had to text her later. I said, first of all, if this is an April Fool's joke, I will find you. And she goes, this is Amy. Her name is Amy Bernstein. And she said, I would not do that to you. I said, you have the greatest job. And she said, it's great sometimes. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. And yeah, it was April 1st, but I had to sit on it because, of course, if worse comes to worse, then the world blew up or something like that, I couldn't, if I decided to go pursue a man again and got a terrible GPA, I obviously wouldn't receive the award. So I had to kind of sit on it, and I couldn't tell anybody. I decided to tell people on orientation day. So yeah, so it was a month and a half that I sat on my secret, and that was the worst.
I'm one of the speakers usually for Chancellor's Leadership class, so I can't wait to see you out.
Oh, okay.
So that'll be fun on that. But yeah, Amy actually in the article that I was reading about you had very nice words to say about you too.
Incredibly nice words to say.
Yeah.
And Joy's words were just, I mean, these are people I truly admire. And there's always this little voice kind of back here that's, it's small, because I've told it to shut up enough.
Yeah.
But it's back there, and it says, you don't deserve it. This is all a joke. This is all going to be over soon. And this voice back here just, it's kind of, but when people I admire and an institution I admire, this institution has educated some of the greatest, most brilliant minds, and it really wants me there. Yeah. And that voice is just, the voice is discouraged at this point.
Thinking about your degree, you're talking about going into journalism, and you've got, obviously with Ace, you've had a lot of passion in his life and helping him become the fine young man he's becoming. He's a pretty cool kid. I like Ace a lot.
He's so funny.
You've got passion in that area. You've got passion also in the area of you want to become an investigative journalist.
I do.
Correct? Yeah. So that who were some of the journalists that inspired you?
Oof. The first and foremost is Jerry Mitchell. I moved here in 2004, and in 2005 was when the trial for Edgar A. Killen happened. And that was the first time in my life, I was 25 years old, that was the first time in my life that I ever really thought that journalism is way beyond and way more important than reporting the news. Yeah. Journalism is changing things and saving lives. And that was, of course, that was a million years ago to me. That's a totally different Stacey. But then I guess kind of one of the first people who attracted my attention was Gracie Harris. in this lifetime. There's a before Stacey, and then there's a flip-flops, and
we'll
then
talk
there's a
about that in
Stacey.
just a minute, because I think people need to hear a little bit of that to understand why you are where you are today.
Yeah, but yeah, Gracie Harris she was the education journalist, and I read a lot of her stuff, and I thought, gosh, it's so important. And then of course Anna Wolf is just, she's my hero, and she is so young, and she let me ride along with her last year, and she and my little boy have the same birthday. And Co Bragg is another person who's just a huge hero in my eyes. The stuff that she reports on is just incredible. Jody Cohen with ProPublica. ProPublica is where I would love to work one day. Just put it out there. But these are people who just, I mean, they change things. Shoshana Walter, she did a big investigation into Synacor, which was a for-profit work-based rehab program. And it's regressive and it's punitive. And I would love to spend a very long time talking about how punishing addicts re-traumatizes and adds to their trauma. And that kind of stuff doesn't work. It doesn't work long term. It's really trauma recovery and trauma therapy that helps people like me.
I think what you said earlier about how you have had to tell that voice to shut up. I think when you re-traumatize somebody who's been through trauma, that voice tends to get louder. I mean, it's the amygdala basically going full blast because you're in fight or flight mode the whole time. That's what the little voice is it's trying to protect you, but the bottom line is not. You had a lot of really bad things happen to you in a quick succession. Because like I said, when we knew each other back in 2005, you were a housewife, you had a little boy who was a preemie who had, had cerebral palsy. Come to find out he'd have autism down the road too. You'd had some challenges there. But, life was tough, but it was okay. But then things started getting rough. And just kind of give us the story from that point and how you hit the low point and how you got to where you are today.
So, excuse me. After Ace was born, now I had already had an ectopic pregnancy. And during that ectopic pregnancy, that's a pregnancy that gets stuck in the fallopian tube and has to be resolved. And I sat in my car that day and I thought, I'm absolutely just going to go off into the woods. Nobody's going to find me. And, my baby and I are going to die. And I said, there's no way that I can go through with this. And then I thought about my husband, now my ex-husband. I thought about my husband running toward me, and he was leaving work and he was running toward me. And I thought about my mom, and I thought, okay, I can't just go off and die. And then my little boy, he's my rainbow baby. And then he's born 3 months early. His birthday's tomorrow, but he should be a Leo like his mama. He was supposed to be born August 20th. And that was horrific. And trauma is something, it's born of something that you just can't escape. You can't change the situation in any way, and you are rendered totally powerless. And then I had a miscarriage. And after that miscarriage, boy, I started eating and eating and eating and eating. And eventually I went to this great place in Flowood for eating disorder recovery, and hooked up with a psychiatrist and a therapist there who long-term did a lot of harm to me. So I have some therapy trauma in there too. The psychiatrist got me hooked on some psychiatric drugs that are heavily addictive and really didn't do a lot to staunch the flow of prescriptions. And right around that time, I started keeping some dark secrets, things that I was doing that were hurting a lot of the people around me. And one day, those secrets and the voices from them and all of this it's so hard to describe, this like screaming and outrage and fear, and all of this in my head was saying, it's got to stop, it's got to stop. And I said, I'm either going to pick up a gun or I'm going to pick up a bottle of alcohol. And the gun was not where it was supposed to be. The gun was in the garage being cleaned. And so the vodka where it was always stored in the liquor cabinet. It was it was always there because we didn't really drink. I picked it up that night and I was in love. It shut up every single voice in there, and it also stopped every bit of trauma recovery I had done up to that point. Because alcohol mixes badly with psychiatric medication, it turns out. And this was in April 2012. Of course, the behavior I was engaging in got worse and worse and worse. And the drugs that I was doing got worse and worse and worse. And of course, the alcohol was nightly. I was blacking out every single night. I would tell myself at night that I wasn't going to do this again. And in the morning, I would wake up hungover, sweating, miserable, and say, oh yeah, I'm going to do this again tonight. And I was spending an unholy amount of money on alcohol and getting opiates as often as I possibly could. And I went into another day treatment program, and I learned some incredibly good panic attack, anxiety reducers. But I didn't have to use them because I could still go home and drink. Yeah. Do you see how this is all right. It's very cyclical. And eventually, my ex-husband started taking the money, and he canceled my debit card and he canceled the credit card, and I raged. And one night I was arrested for domestic violence, and there were restraining orders against me. And from that point on, I was homeless. I was couch surfing for a little while. And then I wound up in Matt's house, which is a homeless shelter in West Jackson. And then I was drinking there. I was drinking malt liquor, just warm malt liquor on a couch upstairs, and throwing the cans behind the couch. Oh, and it got darker and darker and darker. And eventually, January of 2016, I attempted suicide twice. And the second time, I swallowed the rest of a bottle of anti-anxiety medication on the way to St. Dominic. And my mom said no more. She stepped in and found me an excellent place to go in Chicago. But that day, the day that I swallowed that bottle, was January 22nd, 2016. And I've been sober ever since. Haven't touched a thing. And I've been forced, in a good way, to work on the trauma recovery, anxiety, sit with my depression, recognize it, work around it, and actually do the work instead of sitting back and relying on alcohol to help.
What are some of the ways that you do the work?
So in the two places that really hammered home the tools to reduce anxiety those places helped me learn to recognize my emotions, recognize and work with my emotions, and tell me that my emotions are not a bad thing. Emotions are not actually bad. They may be inconvenient at times, but they're not actually bad. And then my 12-step recovery program was the place that people knew what I was going through at any point in time. And no matter what kind of person is there, we're all kind of the same, kind of egomaniacs in a little bit of a way. And yeah, those people are kind of my stepping stone to do the work on my other brain things, my other brain lizard things.
Well, you mentioned a higher power, and I think that's one of the gifts of the 12-step program is it teaches you, because when somebody goes through a lot of trauma or childhood trauma, generally there's a control aspect. You're always wanting to be in control of every situation, and if you're not, that's when you're like, I'm not worthy or whatever. So there's that. So for you, being able to have that safe place and be able to go with people, so you didn't realize I don't have to be in control. You can pull yourself out of that waterfall and look around and go, okay, this is okay. Stacy's all right.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get to that point? I mean, because, and I was trying to think about when I interviewed you, because at that point you were waiting tables and you had done really well at it. You got named the top server in Jackson. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
So that was the first of many awards to come. But I mean, how long did it take you said you literally stopped that night, but it was still a long journey, wasn't it, to get to where you could.
Of course, and it still is.
Yeah.
I remember a gentleman telling me that you don't really have a good head on your shoulders until you have 5 years clean and sober.
Wow. Okay.
I was like, come on, man, that's bleak. That's bleak. I think I had 2 years at the time. What?
For that pep talk.
It takes longer than this.
Yeah.
Some days I still feel like I'm that person that I was on January 22nd, 2016.
Yeah.
Some days I am. Some days I don't want to do things and I'm angry about it.
Yeah.
I'm angry at the fact that I have to do things. I'm angry at the fact that I have to work on myself. And something that is important in 12-step recovery is checking yourself every single day.
Yeah.
Your ego and have I hurt people? And that's something that gets to me sometimes when I get these when I get this recognition. That's so strange to say to me, is that I have really hurt people and it eats me alive some days. But one of my mentors told me one time, are you that person today?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not gonna be. And she said, that's all you can do. And that's all I can do today is not be the person I was on January 21st, 2016, or January 20th, or the day before that, or any of the 5 years before that I was blitzed.
Your Twitter feed has always been good. And I mean, you're always very open and very honest and everything. But during that time, you really got caustic at that point. And
I'm sure.
And you were just like really going after people and really tough. And it was kind of sad because you saw your friends starting to push away from you a little bit, even online on that too. And that's why I said, I love your Twitter feed now because you're very open and honest about things. Last night, apparently you decided to drink coffee, right?
5 o'clock.
Yeah, like 5 o'clock. So you were good and caffeinated, but you really wrote some profound tweets, and I'll just kind of sum them up here. But you were talking about different people that you knew that had gone through trauma and that had worked out their lives and were dealing like that. And it makes you realize that, if you look to your left and to your right, and if you don't see somebody that's going through trauma, you're probably the one that's going through trauma. I mean, it's very prevalent, and so many people are working through their lives. And I have a feeling that you're kind of interested in helping others to be able to do that with your journalism.
Certainly. My spotlight, the thing that I want to study and work on and write about the most is the school to prison pipeline.
Yeah.
Um, so much trauma happens at school, and that hurts me to say, but it happened to my little boy, and that's a big reason we had to get out of where we were.
Yeah.
And it's not happening now. But so much of what happens to my fellow, people in recovery happens in their childhood. And they tell me, and they tell me the stories, and I've got goosebumps and tears in my eyes just thinking about it, because so much happens to them, and it's like, how are you still here?
Yeah. How
did you survive any of that? And then I think to myself, how did I survive any of the stuff that I survived? And so of course I want to spotlight things kind of early on. And I also, I'm involved with a few different organizations. One of the most important things to me is making sure that a lot of people have Narcan. Just as much as you've got hand sanitizer and Band-Aids in your purse or in your car, people should have Narcan, because Narcan is saving lives, and you can find it for free. And I try every single time I see, somebody giving out free Narcan, especially in Mississippi, but anywhere else, because you never know.
Which is a drug that helps you stop having an overdose.
Yes, right. It stops an overdose immediately. It reverses the effect. It also puts you into withdrawal, which is gross. It's a really horrible process. But it puts you into immediate withdrawal, and it stops an overdose, and it saves lives. It saves lives. Every police officer has them. I know for a fact that every RA at Ole Miss has them. They're always at the Grove. The Oxford police officers always have them at the Grove. They have like this whole Narcan tent. And my thing about being open with my story is that it's so hard for people who are still in, the suck is what I call it.
Yeah.
It's so accurate, who are still in it, to see anything beyond where they are right there. And that's why I tell my story. And that was part of what the tweets were last night. I actually had one specific person in mind who follows me, who's still in it and can't even fathom a life beyond the suck. And that's common. But yeah, my journalism, I've got to do the thing that I'm passionate about. And that's putting a spotlight on injustices and power imbalances and people taking advantage of other people. And that's the biggest thing that I'm passionate about.
You said that things don't get better until you've been clean for 5 years. That's about how long you've been clean.
It is. I didn't say that. That the old timer, he said 30 something.
The other person said that. Sorry, I just cut it short. Sorry.
Yeah, he did say it, but you start to feel the effects of not drowning your brain within a week.
Yeah, okay.
Because within the first week, you're still kind of like shedding, and it feels bad, and you're trying to drink water, and you're trying to eliminate the shakes, which if you're a heavy alcoholic or a heavy benzodiazepine user, talk to a doctor before you stop.
Yes.
Simple as. But for the first week, you're just feeling bad, and you're trying to hook up with somebody who's helpful, and that's hard and that's awkward. You're also still kind of living in the suck, even though you're not actively using, you're still living in the bad place. But the brain starts to clear up. It starts to clear up, and it's magical. I remember thinking, I probably had a month, and I thought to myself, wow, I am funny. I am genuinely a funny person, and I'm kind of smart, and I'm kind of quick-witted. And it was like, I didn't realize that about myself. Other people realized it about me, but I didn't realize that about myself. And that was incredible. And then you start to do the hard work, which is apologizing.
Yeah.
But before that, you have to be a person that's worth forgiving. And that's hard too, because you don't ever have to work on that if you're drinking. You don't ever have to. The pain is not yours when you're drinking, it's everybody else's.
Yeah.
And you got to become a person that's worth forgiving. And
But say, because you could just say I'm sorry and there could be nothing behind it. But
oh,
yeah, but once you've done that work, you know, people see that you're coming from a good place.
yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
How did people respond when you came to apologize?
Of course, the people who were in my life every single day and saw me becoming that person, they were open and loving and forgiving and said that it wasn't necessary. But the person who humbled me the most was a very close family member. He was the first person who started bringing up the things that I had done. And for somebody who's got this massive ego, and a very low self-esteem up to that point, that was awful.
You feel like you're being attacked?
I felt like I was being attacked, but he was just kind of getting it out.
Yeah.
And telling me the ways that I had hurt him and the ways that I had hurt my other family members. And I had to just sit there and I had to let him talk. And he was right. And he was right to do it. And I'm grateful that he did. But it hurt. Oh, it hurt. And but I needed it. I needed to know. And then there was one of my closest friends had a baby right before I crashed. She had a baby right before that. And she sat with me and she said, "This is what you missed." And she showed me a big photo album that she had kept. And I was like, oh. And now that little boy, he's my heart. You probably see him. He's the top one right now. But these, I mean, my nieces, my nephews, my godchildren, they're my reasons. My little boy, I've got my little tattoo here. He's my reason.
Yeah.
And
not so little anymore though.
Oh, he's 6'3". He's taller than you.
I know. No way that he's gonna be taller than me.
Unbelievable. The things that I missed with them, and it's still, I don't have a lot of pictures of Ace from those days, and that hurts.
Yeah.
But there he is. There's my baby right there.
But obviously, you and your ex-husband,
Mm-hmm.
you can't reconcile, but you've reconciled in the fact that you can work together for Ace and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So that relationship has gotten to be on a more healthy footing.
Oh, it's so healthy. And it's also really weird because we're close.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that was tough on him too. And like I said, I know him also and like him also. And I know that was tough times for him. But like you said, at the end of the day, you guys are working for Ace. But the good news is that really, like you said, you're worried about loans, you're worried about everything else. Now you've got 2 more years of education in front of you and you don't have to pay a darn thing.
Not a thing. Not a thing. And I still have, certain grants. I've got another scholarship. I joined the Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society in my freshman year. So I'll have books covered. I'll have some living expenses covered. And student loans are heavy in the news right now.
Yeah.
And you read people's individual stories about how deep they are in it. And that's an abuse of power too. Anyway, but you read about this stuff and I think, I can't believe I will never have to, I don't have to worry about that. And it's not just that. but it's the fact that the school is giving it to me. The school saw me as not only worthy, but really deserving of coming there. And there's still, Stacey is still, the headline of that story said, Mississippi woman was a homeless couch surfing alcoholic. Where is she in there? She's still in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think, but then at the same time, I'm in academia. I'm a student and I'm a great student. And I don't have to have the worries of student loans or, figuring out how to pay for books or anything like that. That's going to be, it's so hard to process. It truly is.
Yeah, it's like you literally won the lottery, except the fact that you earned actually winning the lottery. Part of your grades, you got a 3.9 because of that 1B darn history class. But that's okay. That's okay. But you also had to write an essay too. And I mean, this is based on community service, academic excellence, leadership abilities, and perseverance. You wrote basically, what did you write about?
It's a funny story. I thought that it was a 750-word essay. And so I wrote 750 words. And at 11:50, the night it was due, I realized it was 750 words. I had to edit out, and I had edited it down from 2,000.
Oh no.
So there was the central element was what my son went through with the school that we left. And it was a truly horrible story. He was treated very, very badly and misunderstood intentionally by the district. And I was able to kind of drop in there that, my son was not only having to deal with this, but he was having to deal with a mom who wasn't there.
Yeah.
And even when I was there, I was so far away that I might as well not be there. And I know that it was compelling. I know that it's probably one of my stronger pieces of writing. But it was also the thing that made me want to be a journalist. I've got to study this. I've got to write about this. I've got to spotlight the fact that this is happening. And my one story that I reserve big parts of, because it's my son's privacy.
Yeah.
My one story can't be the one that I've got to write a lot of stories about a lot of people, and I'm tearing up about it. But if you read, the ProPublica spotlight on a little girl named Grace and the things that they do, the things that they write about, those things are incredible. And I want to be part of that spotlight. And that's what I put in that essay, that I want to be part of that spotlight, and I want to write about it. And that's the big thing that's driving me to journalism.
Well, Stacey, I think your story is one, I think what it has given you is empathy. I think really honestly, and that's what'll make you a great storyteller, just because what you have lived and what you've been through and what you've seen, and you understand, because I think some people just go through the life without their headlights on. They don't see what's going on around them a little bit. You're awake now. I mean, you're awake and you're living. So you start in the fall, right?
Oh yeah.
Nervous?
Oh, I'm so nervous because Ace is starting high school too.
Okay,
Thankfully,
stop that, because that makes me feel old. But
I know, but he's starting high school, and thankfully he starts high school 3 weeks before I started Ole Miss. But I am going to, June I've designated as like my lawless time. June is going to be sleeping and going places and doing things, but July I am really going to study campus, because campus is just a labyrinth of buildings, and I feel like there's a new one built every day. So the campus, I've tried my hardest in the last 2 years to learn, but I'm going to learn my directions. I'm going to learn parking. I'm going to learn, if I'm going to use the bus, I'm going to really, really focus in July. And it'll be my first, post-pandemic semester. And that's going to be hugely different. And then it's going to be a challenge, but I have this fallback thing. I've been there and done that.
Yeah.
And every single time I've upgraded in my life, like when I first got my first apartment, said, okay, if this doesn't work out, I can just go right back into sober living. Cool. And if I've always got this fallback in my brain that I've been through way worse than walking into a class probably late and sweaty on my first day.
That's true.
I'll say.
Yes, by far. But I mean, it is going to be, because I've taken some classes working on some postgraduate degrees and so forth. And it's so much different when you get to be older, because you're in there the grade is important, but you just go in there, you're just like, I want to learn this.
Oh, yeah.
And then the grade comes. It's funny, the process. If I'd have just known this when I was 18, it would have been a lot easier.
Oh, right.
But I know you're just going to go in and so do you know what your classes are going to be this fall?
So far, I've got 3 journalism classes. There's political science, and then another. I wasn't prepared for this test, Mr. Ramsey. I can't.
That's okay.
But I think that I might
hurt your GPA.
I might excuse myself from one of those journalism classes and replace it with a writing class, because I want my writing to be strong.
There's some good writers up there and good writing teachers, so I think you'll be okay. I think you'll be all right. Well, Stacey, I really appreciate you taking the time today. I just want to say, I feel like we've covered a lot, but I feel like we haven't covered a lot. Is there anything that you want to add? Because, I did not write down questions. I just wanted to be able to talk to you about this.
That was one of the things that I said in that tweet stream last night, my 1 a.m. caffeinated tweet stream. I am more open with my story than most people, and more kind of well connected to people who want to hear my story and spotlight my story than most people. But my story is not rare. My success is not rare as far as recovery goes. It is not simply possible that a life in recovery from, I don't just mean addiction. I mean putting in the work on any kind of mental illness recovery. Mm-hmm. It's not just possible. It is 100% guaranteed that your life will be more incredible than you could ever imagine. The thing that I wanted on my first day of recovery was my ex-husband to take me back, move into my old home, and just go back to being a quiet little housewife. That's all I wanted. And if I still had that, love my ex-husband, love that he is my ex-husband. So if I still had, if that's all that I had, if that's all that I had accomplished, where would I be now?
Right.
Would I have had to do the work? Would I still be sober? The life, the things that my friends have shown that they're capable of, and the things that my friends have accomplished, like, they blow my mind and I blow my mind, because this life life in recovery is incredible.
Let
It
me
is truly incredible.
let me ask you this, because just part of the way the brain works. I mean, just not that I'm a cartoonist, not a psychologist, but I mean, our brain is a big user of energy. It creates scripts to make things easy. It takes shortcuts. It tells stories. It does that. So if you go through that trauma at some point in your life, your brain is wired a certain way. So you are literally going through autopilot, reacting, being triggered. All these things are happening to you. Then you go to therapy, and therapy wakes you up and makes you realize you're going through all these different things you're going through. And suddenly life becomes like you're running through molasses because you're having to think about everything.
Every step.
You've talked about it. I mean, obviously the 12-step program helps you a lot. You still get therapy. They have you on good medication. You've got balance in life. What is the spark though that helps you push through and change when it's hard? Because that seems like the hardest thing about getting from needing therapy to actually getting healed.
Knowing that everything's temporary. Everything is temporary. You can't be happy all the time. You can't be sad all the time.
Yeah.
My friend passed away the day after orientation, the day after one of the most exciting times of my life. My friend drank herself to death.
Oh.
And she was one of my core people. She was one of my rocks.
Yeah.
She was part of this whole sorority that we had established in sober living. And it was the most piercing and overwhelming grief that I have felt since I got sober, and probably in the last 10 years. I was trying to get somewhere so that I could expel the grief, because there was screaming and I knew that it was temporary. At no point during that time or during the week that came or during the leading up to and the funeral, and at no point did I even think of drinking, because I knew that it was temporary. And every hard time I go through now is temporary, and there are better days. And there's ups and downs, and that's the big thing, is knowing that everything is temporary and being able to kind of claw my way through the things that are really, really hard. And that's how I get through now.
That's awesome.
And
I think that's a good thought to leave on. Stacey, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Marshall. It's good to see your face.
And same here. And I mean, I hope to bump into you on campus this fall at some point, but it'll be, we'll check in for an update. But anyway, I mean, I'm thrilled for you, and this was great today. Thank you.
Thank you.